In his presence there is comfort. In his presence there is peace. When we seek the Father's heart, we will find such blessed assurance in the presence of the Lord. Cover me, Lord, with your presence.
Good morning and welcome to Unveiled, a presentation of the Church Street Church of Christ in Lewisburg, Tennessee. Unveiled is simply a one-on-one conversation between Christian people designed to help each of us as followers of Christ become more aware of and better respond to the presence of God at work in our daily lives. Today we're joined by Laken. Laken is my special guest for this conversation today. And Laken, first of all, thank you for being with me today. And why don't we begin by you just introducing yourself to our listening audience?
So my name's Laken, of course, and I'm 22 years old. This past May, I just graduated from Freed-Hardeman University, and I've worked at Priceless IGA for 6 years, but I just recently quit there, and I'm now at the county clerk's office. So you can come see me to renew your tags. And I have been going to Church Street my whole life, so 22 years.
Okay. You say you're working at the county clerk's office?
I am.
And you're doing, what kind of things do you do there?
So I renew tags. I do a lot of title work, just about anything with cars that you have to do, like registration and stuff like that. And we also do like marriage license, business license, passports there too, and some driver's license renewals.
And just out of curiosity, how did that come about? Is that something you wanted to do? You answer an ad? Or, I mean, how do you get that kind of job?
Well, I was really just wanting to get away from the grocery store because I'd been there since I was 16, and I really wanted to pursue a job that related to my degree in some way. And my degree is history with an emphasis in psychology and a minor in law and politics. And so I was like looking around everywhere, and I was starting to get like really stressed out. And I was like, oh, I don't care what it is at this point now. I just want a job. And so I forgot that Will's aunt is actually the county clerk, Daphne Fagan, or Daphne Gertz now. And I was like, wait, is your aunt hiring? And so he was like, yes, actually, like send her email. So that's kind of how that came about. And I actually really love it. And I think I'm going to stay there for a while and hopefully have career growth.
Okay.
In the county.
So is that a pretty steady, regular hour type job, I'm assuming?
Yes, it's 8 to 4:30 every day, and I'm off Saturdays and Sundays. So it's really nice to just not have to worry about weird schedules at a grocery store anymore.
Yeah. Now, you were at IGA for quite a while, right?
Very long time.
So you moved up kind of a managerial position there?
I did. I started off as a cashier when I was 16, and then I was around 18 when I became a key holder there. And a few months before I left, I was assistant manager. So
what does a key holder mean?
So a key holder is kind of like a smaller version of a manager, I guess. They have manager duties, but like compared to an assistant manager, they don't like order the store, or really that, to me, that's the only difference, was that the assistant managers would order the store because I would close the store, open the store. I would be the leader of shifts. You know, I mean, I'd be there by myself with minors and stuff as like my workers for the night. So they're basically the same thing, just like a slight difference in responsibilities, I guess.
I was curious because key holder sounds pretty prestigious.
Right. Yeah, I basically did anything a manager could do. Like, there's not a huge difference there.
Okay. So when you look at your life, and, you know, I heard you say that you've lived here in Lewisburg all your life, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But from where you are right now, looking back on your childhood, your early school years, even up to the present day, I'm curious to know on a spiritual level, when you decided for the first time that God was real to you, not simply going to church, but what made you decide that your faith was your own?
I don't ever really remember having a moment like that. My whole life, like when I was a kid, I remember, like whenever the sun has like rays of lights coming from clouds, they're like really, really pretty. Like I remember in my head, I used to be like, oh, those are little angel rays. Like there was always just something to me that was like revolved around like God and creation in a sense, if that makes any sense at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like looking up at stars and just thinking like, oh, my grandmother's up there, like because she passed away when I was like 6, my dad's mom did. And then like when I was like 8 or 9, I just started reading the Bible every day. Like I would just, I started in Genesis and started working my way through. And I don't remember a thing I read because I was so young and I didn't even really comprehend it. But I just remember thinking like it was something I wanted to do. I read a chapter every night and I got all the way up through Psalms, I think, when I just kind of, as a kid, you just kind of like let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just always kind of remember like being connected somehow, but never really thinking like, oh, God is real. Like this is the moment that I'm deciding that he's real. And in high school, I kind of like stopped going to church and
Now, had you gone to church all those years when you were little?
Yeah, I did. Okay. And I just kind of stopped going to church and stuff a lot more in middle school. And I remember going through like this huge phase in my life where I would be like on Facebook or something and I'd be like scrolling and I would see something like spiritually based, like a post. And if it were talking about God or something, I remember like just scrolling past it like as fast as I could because I don't remember the specific date or how old I was. Remember there was just one specific time where I saw this post about it and I was like, I'm not worthy like to read that because I haven't even been doing anything. Like it was almost kind of like, like a relationship with God, like you're distant sometimes and you're really close sometimes, I feel like. Mm-hmm. And I just went through a really long part of my life where I was distant. And so I wouldn't even like read stuff that had anything to do with it or him because I didn't feel like I was worth reading it, I guess.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
As a matter
I
of
felt
fact,
guilty.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, when I look at your life from the outside looking in, I could see that God is a big part of your life right now. So what moved you from this stage of your life where you felt distant from God and now all of a sudden you're on fire?
Well, I went to CYC in 2017 or it might have been it was 2017. And I like hadn't gone to I'd been going to church stuff. I've never missed an advance, never missed a summer camp. So even through all those times, like I was still going to those things. I just wasn't actively going to church or like reading my Bible or like taking my own time out to spend with God.
Right.
And I remember Chloe asking me if I wanted to go to CYC and I had never been to CYC. That's a trip I'd never been on. And we had a new youth minister and I was just kind of like, no, but I finally agreed because I was like, I might as well just go. And I did. It's not that I didn't want to be there, but I was just kind of like, I didn't want to go almost. Mm-hmm. And so I was just kind of shy and I was uncomfortable. And that trip really helped me kind of come back to going to church and like really pursuing God again, I guess. And I started.
Was that because of the speakers and the event itself?
I got really close to everybody that was there. Like we had a lot of late night talks and stuff and stayed up talking about spiritual things and sharing things we had been through and why we were where we were.
Okay, so that's a great lead in for where I want to go with this discussion. So you're feeling distant from God. You go to CYC reluctantly, you're feeling kind of shy, and you have these late night spiritual talks with other Christian people, your peer groups. What part do you think God was playing in leading you or causing those things to happen?
I think he was using people in the church to really reach out to me, if you want to be honest, because people had tried to reach out to me before and I was just kind of like, I pushed them back. Like I didn't want them to talk to me. I didn't want them to invite me to things because I just didn't feel like, I guess because I didn't feel like I belonged in a sense. And I just, like I said, I felt guilty about it all. And I just, part of me didn't know how to start going back, but I also like felt weird about it. Was almost like a weird pity thing with people coming and reaching out to me. It felt like, I guess. And I guess since I finally gave in, it helped in the long run. So,
there were a couple of years there where we were at Church Street. We were between youth ministers and I coordinated the summer camp. Didn't know you real well at that time because this was during your phase where you weren't coming to church much, but I remember thinking when I saw you at camp that you seemed to really get into that. You seemed to really not just enjoy the fun of camp, but you seemed to be a pretty spiritual thinking person. And I remember thinking after camp was over, maybe a fire got lit there somewhere. And I just can't help but think God was kind of nudging you all through those years, because you never quite let go.
No, I never let go completely. Like I said, I would see posts and stuff and think oh, that's God talking to me, but I'm just keep scrolling. I'm not going to look at it. I'm not worthy enough to even read that. And I mean, I was never going to miss a camp. I was never going to let myself get to where I wasn't going to go to those, because they mean too much to me. And I always have too good of a time, with friends, spiritually and everything else. So
at the risk of getting a little preachy, and I don't want to do that, but I think there's even scripture that tells us about how God nudges people a lot. Even the great apostle Paul, when he's converted when he has the bright light experience on the Damascus Road, Jesus actually says to him, "Why are you persecuting me?" And he says, how long are you going to keep kicking against the goads? That's always been interesting to me, because it suggests that God was trying to nudge Paul to a certain direction, and Paul had been refusing that and going the other direction for a while. But once he got on fire, God certainly knew what he's doing, right?
He did.
And so I think don't you think he works the same way with us?
I think he does all the time. Even right now, I haven't been as spiritual as I would want to be, or that I think even that I used to be a year ago. But there has been things recently that I can tell that he's really kind of hey, get it together. You can do this. So
before the CYC experience, which was kind of a turning point for you, would you have ever thought that you'd be going to a Christian university when you went to college?
No, because my original plans were to go to the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, and I stayed behind and went to MTSU because I wanted to be more involved here with my church. And things changed in a lot of ways during those times. And I had friends that were going to Freed at that point that I'd been on mission trips with, and I'd met at those mission trips, and they were telling me how good Freed was and how much they loved it. And I was well, I'm going to go tour it. And I ended up loving it and went there for the last 2 years of college. And I'm really thankful that I did.
Never looked back.
Never looked back, no.
So again, you got your degree. Tell me again what your degree is in.
History with an emphasis in psychology and a minor in law and politics.
So just from a college standpoint, what does that look like? You have to take, I'm assuming, a lot of history courses. But,
so many.
But then you have to take, what in the law and politics area?
So the main reason law and politics is even my minor is because at MTSU I actually started majoring in political science, decided I didn't like it, and changed back to history once I got to Freed. So essentially, I'd finish a minor without even trying to finish a minor in law and politics, and just kept it.
Right. Okay.
And I just didn't want to drop it. I think I had one more class to take at Freed to make a minor. And I was sure, we'll make a minor. And so the history major is a lot of history classes.
Yeah. Just
any kind you can imagine, Tennessee history, civil history, American diversity was one of my favorites. There's a lot there. And then the psychology came from, I actually had started counseling at Freed. And so I got really into psychology and decided I might possibly want to pursue that as a career and go to grad school for it, which I'm still debating on. And so I made it, the emphasis is basically another minor in simple words. And so I just took some classes to make a minor in that.
Now, when you were telling me about your job earlier over at the courthouse annex, you said that's something you really enjoy and you see yourself staying there for a while. If you were to try to look into the crystal ball and look into Laken's life in the future, do you see a path that is kind of defining itself? Do you know kind of what you're leaning toward doing, and where do you go from here?
Well, right now I see myself staying in Lewisburg for a long time, and that's mainly because of my new job, and also because Drew, the guy I'm dating now, he got a new job at a Ford dealership that he really likes, and he can go really anywhere with that. He could go just about to any place and work at a Ford dealership for the most part. And so, but he really likes Lewisburg, even though he's working in West Tennessee, and there's not much in West Tennessee job-wise, unless I wanted to work in Jackson or Memphis, which isn't ideal just because I don't want to work in a city.
Yeah.
And so we plan on being here if things work out for us.
So when you think about those things, do you feel nudgings from God? And what role do you think God's playing on helping you carve out that place that you're going to ultimately land as an adult?
Well, I'll be honest, like I've been to some other churches and I just didn't really care for them as much, and not in the sense that I thought they were bad, but I just didn't fit in. And I hate to say that about a church, but you get different feelings at different churches, and Church Street's just home. And so I just feel like it'd be best for me to stay here a long time, but I also feel like God's really nudging me to go towards mission work. And my boyfriend is really interested in mission work as well. And so I think that is definitely in the future, whether it's long term, like living somewhere for missions, or short term, like trips. One of the two, it's going to happen, I think.
Well, and when you start to look at your life beyond just the physical stuff that all of us see every day, but you start to think about yourself as a spiritual person, all of a sudden you start thinking about things like that. You think about missions, and you think about what's my place in the church. And by the way, you shouldn't feel badly about not fitting in at one, because the church, we've always said it all your life, because we've said it all mine. The church is not the building. It's the people.
It's the people.
And you have connections here, and that's easy to understand. Not to say that you couldn't move to another town and make connections, but that's hard for any of us to have to start over. It was probably hard for you, even with friends, to get a fresh start at Freed, I would assume, when you first got there.
It was, yeah.
A little nervous, but then it became old hat pretty soon, right?
It did.
So I just think it's fascinating, even for a person at your life stage, and I didn't mean to imply a moment ago that you're not an adult, but it seems like from our human perspective, there's so much of your life still ahead of you. And it's fascinating for those of us who are older to look and see, what's God got in mind for Laken Cowser?
Yeah.
and that can be kind of scary too sometimes.
It is. It's like I said, I've been pretty stressed out. And like after I got this new job, I got like 3 other job offers like that I didn't apply for or anything. Like people just reach out to me and I was like, where were you like 3 months ago? So it's just stuff like that it's like, I think God's got it all under control. You just have to open your eyes and realize that sometimes. And like not long ago, I even like wrecked my car. I just bought it. It's like brand new. And then me and my mom were talking. She was like, honestly, like it's just a thing. Yeah. Like it's going to work itself out. Like it's fine. And I was like, you're right. Like it's just a thing. I don't need to be worried about that.
Yeah. And when you look at things, you don't want to ever wreck your car. But
no.
When you look at things like that in the grand scheme of things, as I like to say, those really are things that really aren't important, So when you look at your life right where you are right now and you think about how God is working, how does he use people, your friends? Or do you think he's brought certain people into your life at certain stages to get you to where you are now? And how does that work?
He's brought people in and he's taken them out.
Okay.
He does that. And like I've had relationships that just needed to end, whether I wanted them to or not. I've had some that I've ended. I've had some that other people have ended with me. And I think God's working hardcore in that aspect, and it needs to happen. And sometimes you think it's the worst thing in the world. In reality, like you get a few years down the road, you're like, no, this is the best thing that could have ever happened to me. But on the other end of that spectrum, I think like, I work with the public a lot, and sometimes I work with like really, really unhappy people, and I just like try to be as happy as I can to them. So maybe like they'll pick up on it and they'll be a little bit happier. Like one morning at my new job at the clerk's office, I was working the window and this guy was renewing his tags and he thanked me for being so cheerful. And so I was like, okay, well, it's paying off. Like people are noticing and it's maybe making people happier. So.
Well, that's the thing about it is being cheerful and happy is contagious.
It is.
A smile is contagious. Even if you're having a rotten day, if you go into a restaurant or going to renew your tags and somebody is friendly and kind and smiling, you can't help but feel better. So, that too, in and of itself, is a way that God is using you, maybe when you don't even recognize it.
Right. Like, I think if you want to be close to God, you have to be close to the people he created. Right. And it's just about as simple as that. And so whether it's an ending relationship or a new one or just people you see day to day, like you just have to remember like they're God's people and like you need to treat them with love, I guess.
Yeah, that's very good. So, since you mentioned that you're 22 years old and you've lived in Lewisburg all your life, it's never been your choice up to now where you live. So do you think God had a purpose for you living this much of your life right here in Middle Tennessee, in Lewisburg? And what's that about?
I think I would have ended up living in Middle Tennessee whether I wanted to or not, just because my mom's side of the family is from Lawrenceburg and then my dad's side is from Lewisburg. So one of the two, I was going to stay in one of those two places in Middle Tennessee. And I think I was meant to stay here because like my grandparents, like they went to Church Street, and then my parents went to Church Street, and now I'm at Church Street. And I knew it probably would have been the same way if it was in my mom's town because her dad was a preacher and stuff like that. So I think I was meant to be here for a long time.
See, and that's interesting for me to hear that, because I grew up in a very different kind of environment where I was always in a big city, and wherever I attended worship services of a church, even before I became a preacher, it wasn't where my grandmother and my mother and, it wasn't a generational thing.
Right.
And that's one of the things that's fascinating to me about living in Lewisburg is Church Street is a very generational church. It is. And that's a good thing. It's a very positive thing. It has its challenges as well for interlopers like me who come in that don't really
right.
fit.
Yeah.
But I think there is something to be said about family line and heritage, keeping that. I mean, I assume that you see down the road somewhere that you'll have children of your own that you're bringing to church and taking to the nursery at Church Street, but you never know. I mean,
right.
You mentioned missions earlier. What if God lit a fire in you or whoever you ultimately marry and you felt the need to, or you felt the calling, I'll put it that way, to go to, let's say, Africa.
Right.
To be a missionary. Is that something that you would be open to, you think?
Mm-hmm. I'd pick up and go in a heartbeat. I think, like, my mom's side of the family have cousins who have done a lot in the Philippines. And so, like, they lived over there for a long time. And, like, even that, like, inspired me. But I was like, I'd like to do something like that. Like, not even just because I want to, like, live a different life, but just because those people need it. And I do think people in the United States need it too. Like, don't get me wrong, but there's so many people everywhere that need you. Right. So,
I mean, you think about, like you said, anybody, anywhere, even next door to you needs the gospel. We all get that. But to be available to the point that you would change your life if you needed to make that kind of decision. I mean, people are making those kind of sacrifices all the time. And I think that's only possible when a person becomes aware that life is bigger than just everything that I've experienced up to this point.
Right.
That this life is really not about me, it's about God.
It is. And one thing that keeps playing through my mind lately, I don't even know why, I can't put my finger on it, but I keep repeating in my head that it's more blessed to give than to receive. And so I've just been trying to give and give and give anywhere I can. And I've almost exhausted myself at this point because I've been doing a lot lately for everybody, but I just got to keep going. That's what I keep telling myself.
Well, and you've probably heard me say before that I think you can summarize all of the Bible with 4 words: love God, love people.
Yes.
And it sounds like you've discovered that.
I've been trying. Like, I've been babysitting. I stayed at IGA even when I started my new job because they needed the help. I've been doing just anything I can for anybody. Honestly, I feel like, which it has gotten tiring, but at the same time, I'm like, just take a break every now and then and just keep going. Yeah. So
what do you think God's up to this very moment in your life? Here we are, late September 2021. What if you were to try to put your finger on it, and that's hard to do when we're talking about God, but what would you think God is up to right now in your life?
I think God is trying to set me up for a better future. Okay. In the sense that, I got a new job and it's better paying than any job I've had before. And I'm making new relationships with people that I didn't think I would have. So I think if I can just really put my faith in God, and I think He's going to really help me out in the long run, and I think as long as I keep giving to others as I am, then He'll keep giving to me, and bless me, and hope that I can bless others and bless him. So
I heard some very successful businessmen one time having a conversation that always stuck with me, and they were both, as I said, successful. They were both wealthy men and had had a lot of financial success in their business. And they were having a conversation about giving, and they were talking in this case about giving financially. Mm-hmm. But one said to the other, I've learned through the years that if I just give and give and give until it hurts and then keep giving, I've learned that I can't outgive God.
You can't.
And that always stuck with me, because that's absolutely right. The more you invest yourself, it seems like God just keeps coming back with more and more blessings. And that's not why we do what we do. I mean, We don't do it. I don't work harder to say, maybe God will bless me more, and you don't either. But it's true, isn't it? I mean, it seems like the more you pour yourself into something.
It is. And the point you made about, like, that's not why you do it. Like, you don't do it so you can be blessed. Like, I don't want to get emotional, but like when Bill passed away, and I noticed like everybody at his funeral, mm-hmm. and I thought, he must be so lucky to have so many people that love him.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, and I was like, that's the kind of life I want to live. And not for me, but like for those people. Like, I hope I can make that many people feel loved, Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great connection. We think about those people in our own lives who've impacted us like that. And we often say, man, if I could just do half of what that person has done.
Because everybody described him as a friend. And I was like, I want to be a friend to everybody too,
Well, and he was the kind of person that was a friend to people of all parts of society, mm-hmm. different ages, young people as well as older people. And so you can see why. I mean, it was clear that God used him in some special ways.
He did.
So, Laken, this kind of wraps up our time, but I want to thank you for being with me today. I want to thank you for opening up and being honest about your life and sharing what you've shared, because I think that'll be a blessing to you, but it's certainly been a blessing to me, and I know it'll be a blessing to all of our listeners. So,
I hope so.
So thank you again for being with me, and we want to thank all of our listeners for staying with us, and this has been a nice discussion we've had today with Laken Cowser, and so I hope that you'll continue to listen and be a part of this program in the weeks to come. Thank you again.
Thank you.
You have been listening to Unveiled, a presentation of the Church Street Church of Christ in Lewisburg, Tennessee. I am Kyle Bolton, the pulpit minister at Church Street, and I would like to personally invite you to come be with us during our times of worship and Bible study together. We meet every Sunday at 9 o'clock a.m. for our morning worship, followed by Bible classes for all ages at 10:15 a.m. We meet again on Sunday evenings at 6 o'clock p.m. We also have a midweek meeting for further Bible study on Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. I would also like to invite you to tune in to this radio station every Monday through Saturday from 6:40 to 6:45 a.m. for our daily devotional program called Upreach. Thank you for listening. Have a blessed day.
In His presence there is comfort. In His presence there is peace. When we seek the Father's heart, we will find such blessed assurance in the presence of the Lord. In His presence there is comfort. In His presence there is peace. When we seek the Father's heart, we will find such blessed assurance in the presence of the Lord. Come.